Is Melissa Williams. She's a content designer who has specialized in working with startups for the past 10 plus years. She came to content strategy and design from copywriting and marketing. She loves helping brands develop their brand voice and tone guidelines and use those to create amazing user experiences that extend across the entire customer journey. Currently, she's a content designer at Rebellion Defense. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Actually, I just want to give some context to our audience. We are recording this actually live a couple of days before Christmas of 2022. Thank you for championing it and being here so close to the holiday season.
Yeah, of course.
Really appreciate it. So before we get started, beyond the bio, if you could just tell us more about who Melissa Williams is and what sort of startups and also Fortune 50 companies and brands that you have worked with, if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I did get my start in content strategy and content design coming from the copywriting and marketing world. For almost 9 years, I actually ran my own business where I worked with primarily startups. I did also during that time work with some pretty big software companies, some retailers, and accounting software. During that time, I started out doing, typical stuff that a copywriter does, ads, home pages, sales pages, worked with tons and tons of different brands. And then a few years in, I was starting to get approached by companies that were making apps and asked if I could do like the non-marketing writing, which at the time wasn't given the name UX writing or content design necessarily, but that's kind of an area that I started to branch into. So doing all the stuff that's not necessarily the marketing side, but very important for the user experience. I think in my time, I should have kept a running total, but it was definitely, I've worked with over 100 companies,
Wow.
ranging from, 1 to 2 person startups to like, thousands of employees. And the thing that I found is that no matter, how big or how small a company is, if you get content strategy right and content design and you put the user first, it goes a long way in just creating that really cohesive brand experience.
So, content strategy, content development, copywriting, brand voice, brand guidelines, media kit, all of those kinds of things. How are those things different from, and how do they play a role in brand development?
Yeah, so honestly, like every piece that you just talked about is very important for brand development, even though, some of them are quite a bit different from each other. But for me personally, I always think it starts with brand voice and tone and then kind of extends out into everything else, whether we're talking about, user experience content within an app or a content marketing piece. If you have that, the brand values, brand voice and tone, and kind of who you are as a brand, how you talk, how you don't talk, it just helps to create that, when you're looking at like, okay, we need to create a new marketing strategy, you're going to have a clear set of guidelines to follow instead of just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
What are some of those things uh, like startups get it wrong in the early stages that they kind of throw it against the wall to see if it sticks? Like you said, what are some of those kinds of things?
Yeah, so some things that I've seen is just kind of, every say tweet or, message on LinkedIn kind of comes from a different place. So sometimes they're being really witty and funny. They might throw a lot of puns in. And then the next time, all of a sudden, it sounds like, a bot wrote it because it's super technical. And like, there's just no sense of like, who is this brand and what are they actually, who are they as kind of a persona? I think that's kind of one area where it kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Another area that I see, especially with startups, obviously the bigger companies a lot of times have figured this out, but is in the actual like interface copy. So like the UX writing, button copy, tool tips, empty states, all of that stuff, a lot of times just gets sort of filled in by an engineer who didn't really like think necessarily about the brand voice and tone. And so there's a major disconnect. So someone connects maybe with the homepage, they watch a video, they're really excited about the product, then they get in there and it's like, this isn't what I thought I was getting, because it's not matching up and they don't maybe even know why they're having that feeling, but a lot of times it can come back to that experience.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a really important point. What I've experienced in my career too, there's a huge disconnect between the people who actually create the website versus marketing. And typically, oh yeah, the engineers are figuring that out. They're building our Shopify site. When they give it to us, we'll market it because we're a marketing department, and we will buy Facebook ads and Google ads and YouTube and videos and stuff like that, and we'll drive the traffic down to this website the engineers created. What I see from my perspective, because I look at businesses holistically, right? I
Mhm.
see that disconnect, and that's the thing that's missing. The missing part is, why wasn't marketing or somebody who understands the brand really well, typically if it's the founder who understands the heart and soul of that business in a startup, why weren't they involved in that process? Why did they just give it off to their CTO or IT developer or whatever, or web developer, and just hope for the best? And they put something together. Maybe there are amazing web designers out there. They put together something that was so impressive and looked great, but it missed the mark. It
Yeah,
missed the mark for the
exactly.
brand. It doesn't matter how pretty it is. It missed the mark. It's not conveying the thing, and that's a gigantic miss, by the way, between those two things. What you just said.
Yeah, and I think one area, I mean, a lot of it comes down to time, like who has the time to do it. And sometimes, I mean, the time should be made. Let me be clear about that. But a lot of times, like, when it's a startup, everybody's doing as much as they can. People are already pulling all nighters. Like, who's going to spend time to, work on this? And, but I think if taking a step back and looking at it and saying, hey, we've got to get this right because this is our first impression to a customer. Another area I think where it's missed is that once, say, the website goes up, that should not be a one and done. Like that's kind of almost step one. At that point, it should go through user testing, interviews, ask people, like, what do you think you're going to get when you purchase from this site? Talk to people. There's different websites where you can actually, if you don't have customers to work with yet, that you can get people to look at your site and give feedback. You can conduct user sessions. Those are some of my favorite things to do, is to actually, join. Nowadays, it's mostly online. I've done them in person too, but you just kind of get on, say, a Zoom call with someone, have them go through and just talk out loud as they're going through and say whatever comes to their mind. And, as the content strategist, you're taking down notes and realizing, like, wow, I thought this was a really clever, headline here, but it's really confusing the users. So it's got to go.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, one of the brands that I really, really love, and I know that I'm going a little bit away from content, and we're talking to talk about kind of the journey, right? The consumer journey. One of the brands that I really love is IKEA. And the physical store, not their website. When you walk in there, they actually control every step you take, to the
Yep.
point that they check you out and then you leave the building, and you have to follow that path. And if you
Yep.
don't follow that path, then you're getting confused, you're getting lost. But they keep you on the path, and those arrows are very, very helpful in that fashion. But the same in the same breath, I'll say that they missed the mark on IKEA.com. When you go to their
Yeah.
website, that experience should have been brought over so that you have that sort of a. But again, it's like, we need IKEA.com. What should it look like? HomeDepot.com and Wayfair.com look good. Let's make it look something like that. No, but your IKEA.com. Why didn't you make it IKEA experience, which is a very unique retail experience that you go through, right?
Mhm.
And you could translate
Definitely.
that into kind of a digital journey. That's where, when you have those two things, and you miss it, then you're not really, it's not about the copy, right? You said that
Right.
the headline sounded great, but then it was a miss, right? And that
Yeah.
person told you it was a miss. It's the whole thing. How are you telling the story? Why should they care about this journey that you're taking them through, not this just one catchy headline that either you came up with it, or somebody on the team, or an AI bot built it for you, or
Yeah.
pitched it to you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, content design versus content marketing. What's the difference between those two things? Because people use them interchangeably.
They do, yes. And there are going to be people that probably disagree with me because it's still these terms kind of get shuffled around a bit. So to me, content design is everything that's really about the user's experience. And granted, that can include sometimes some content marketing, but typically when we're talking about content design, we're talking about everything like once somebody has committed to, say, using your app, every bit of content that they'll get along the way. So it could be, an onboarding wizard, the tooltips that they're going to see as they work through the app, as they're getting set up, empty states, things like even just what goes on a button. I mean, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. So really everything that helps with the user experience sometimes, and that even extends into like documentation, user guides, product manuals, that kind of thing. That's usually more on the technical writing, but definitely nowadays there's a lot of bridge between those because you want those things to be very user friendly as well. And then content marketing, my definition of that is anything that gets a user to, first trial your software or first make their first purchase on your website. So, we're talking about blogs, could be podcast interviews. It doesn't have to just be written content. A lot of times people think content marketing and they think it all has to be written, but it can be audio, video, anything that's like promotion driven, anything with social media can fall in there. And then the website's kind of both. I would say like, your homepage, your sales pages, those are both can be approached from both content design and a content marketing focus.
Yeah, one of the things I advise my clients is that, especially big brands, when they distribute their product, it could be digital or physical, right? Product through other retailers like Amazon.com and Target.com or Instacart or anything like that. That, from my perspective, that's your digital footprint. It doesn't matter that it sits on Target.com, right?
Right.
You need to treat it as if that was your present, that was your presence, because multi-million of site visitors are visiting that site and they're looking at your brand. It's like saying that, oh, I have a store in Americana Mall. I don't care how it's going to look.
Yeah.
Just make it look like every other store in Americana Mall. But that's not you're not going to approach that. It's nonsense, right? It doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you want to present yourself really well on every digital footprint that you have across the board, whether it's Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Best Buy, Target, it doesn't matter. Or if it's a digital products that you're selling on, let's say you're selling photos or music or anything like that, you want to give it the best representation of that brand, and that should be part of your content strategy going across the board. And if they don't allow you to edit it, like Amazon allows you to edit things, right? They give the controls
Hmm.
back to the brand, but some retail platforms don't. So create a retail playbook and give them and say that, look, this is where you download our assets. Here's our videos. Here's our different types of things, new products and stuff like that. This is where you go to do that. So what are your thoughts on that approach, that holistically you have to look at your whole digital footprint?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, it's not just your website. Even for like, say, tech brands, SaaS startups who are selling, software mostly through maybe the App Store or through their web app. There's going to be review sites. There's going to be things like G2 and places where you can actually control your sort of, the review platform for yourself. So everywhere, I think there has to be, yeah, a set strategy. There should be consistency as much as is possible with, branding colors and all that, which gets a little bit out of content strategy, but is also something that a content strategist can at least, create these guidelines around and help to promote those. Of course, with some sites, they're going to take that brand book and just say thanks and do their own thing. But, as far as the ones that will, look at those suggestions and things, I definitely agree. It's, everything from like your listing to your photos, everything should have a feel where it's like if I see, say you sell on Amazon, Target, Walmart, all of those sites, your own brand, that when I see the photo, I should know what the brand is. It shouldn't matter which site I'm looking at your product on.
So here's another one for you. When I look at startups, some startups, and specifically if it's because you don't have enough funding to do the things that you need to do right in the early
Hmm.
stages. Um, for some, for example, social media management or digital marketing, it almost is an afterthought. That's kind of I don't know how you feel about that. And then what they do is they give that up to a close friend who might know this much about TikTok, or the person maybe shot a video and uploaded it on YouTube, and it's a family member, and it's a nephew or a niece. They bring that person on and go like, oh yeah, that person is going to handle that entire strategy there. What are your thoughts for those startups that don't have enough funding to do the right thing, but you don't want them to doing the wrong thing? Wrong thing being
Right.
that they bring somebody on who has no business touching that stuff.
Yeah, no, and that I do see that a lot as well. Sometimes when I had my own company, I was brought in to fix a lot of that, and it's like, there's so much out here. So yeah, okay. So if you don't have the money, obviously you can't go and hire, a social media rock star to run it. As much as that would be the best advice I could give. So what I suggest, I mean, there is so much out there these days in terms of, you can go to YouTube and pretty much learn how to do anything, right? I mean, you can follow other accounts that teach you, how to do social media the right way. And sure, some of it is going to be a little hit or miss, but if you don't have the funding to actually hire an expert, become the expert yourself, or get that family member to become the expert before they start going live, before they start posting on your behalf, um, I would make sure there's like some time, and I know everybody wants to get things done now, but it's way better to take the time and to learn a little bit and then post and have a good response than to do the wrong thing and have, the backlash of that coming at you. So it is difficult. I will say a lot of times with, when it's like something quick like TikTok or whatever, you can just try things and upload and see, as long as you're not, doing something too crazy. But I think like with YouTube, I mean, know which channels are kind of more higher investment. So like if you're going to run a YouTube channel and you want to have videos, don't do that until you can have at least high quality audio. Like in and high quality audio can be $100 microphone. It doesn't have to be, some super expensive, even, like AirPods are better than just holding your phone out, and, but that works for TikTok. Like, so know which channels you can get away with doing, kind of just some basic stuff, and know which things you want to, grow into as your strategy evolves.
Yeah. So since you live that life of content design, right? One, what does your day look like, or a week look like, when you're working on these amazing content and strategies and stuff like that? And what do you like the best out of everything else? First, let's figure out like what happens in a week in your life.
Okay, yeah. So typically, what kind of surprises people, I think, the most about content design, and this is, whether when I was working for my own company or all the, various companies I've worked with, is that I write very little. Like I spend very small portion of my day or my week is actually writing. Most of what I'm doing is research. Doing a lot of user interviews, watching user sessions, whether those are recorded at some companies I've been the one conducting those sessions, and then going through and like synthesizing all of that feedback and really creating, first and foremost, like these documents of research. Some of it's video, some of it's just written. Going through, I spend a lot of time going through like support channel chat logs to find out where are people kind of getting tripped up here. What are the questions that people are asking about this website over and over again that we can address to free up our chat agents to not have to keep answering the same question. So a lot of time is spent doing that. And then, of course, the writing portion, if I'm, let's say, creating a user guide, for software, I will create that and then test it with users, because it's only as good as whether the users can take that user guide and then utilize the software effectively. Because if they're hitting page 10 of a 30-page user guide and giving up, then I failed. So I got to go back, reiterate. So it's a lot of editing, a lot of rewriting. But yeah, that initial creation of someone says create a user guide, writing it's almost the last step. There's going to be a ton that happens before that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on several things there, right? Most people, whenever content is mentioned, they assume it's copywriting. They
Yeah.
equate those two things together and go like, "Oh, wait, when am I going to get something to read?" Well,
Yep.
no, first I need to see what needs to be written, and it's a
Exactly.
design. You're designing the strategy first of all, right? And
Yep.
what sort of tools do you use, by the way? Because to me, while you were talking, I kept on hearing myself saying scrapbooking. You're scrapbooking all of these things that you're collecting, all these insights and stuff like that. Some of it could become FAQ questions that you're answering on the
Mhm.
site, so it becomes self-service. Some of it could be on one of those automated live chat. You could add it in there so that before even a live chat person comes on, they could say, oh yeah, that's my question. They press it and then they see the answer right then and there. They
Yep.
can self-help, in that scenario. So you can think about strategically how to structure your content, so you're feeding it to them, whether it's on a product page or it's on a home page. It's part of it. Maybe it's testimonials you're sharing on social media. All of that stuff is content, but you have to have a strategy on where to place that content where it makes sense, right?
Right. Yeah. And so like are you asking like tools to use to create that actual like strategy? There's a lot of tools I've used. So like for synthesizing research and stuff, right now I'm using an app called Dovetail. It's great for, you can tag things. So like, a certain type of comment. You can go through on a video and it'll give you the transcript and you can like tag what you need. As far as creating the strategy, a lot of times for like editorial calendar and knowing like, where we're gonna post when. A lot of times this is probably terrible, but I use just a Google sheet to just keep track, kind of create a calendar in there. Trello boards I've used with a lot of clients. Really any of that tracking kind of, software, Jira, track a lot of stuff in Confluence. So there's so many tools out there. I don't want to like say one tool is like the tool you have to have. If you're just starting out, if you're, a new startup, I would say just use Google Sheets and track it that way until, don't buy an expensive tool until you really need it. That would be my suggestion. But yeah, definitely though, you want to be tracking stuff. You can't just be throwing stuff out and say, oh yeah, I think we posted this last week. Let's do something similar. Like you should know and be able to track. And then also, what's really great is if you can track the results. So like say you send an email and any of the good email marketing systems will offer this. You can see how many people clicked it, how many went to the website, how many people marked it as spam. Like these are important things to know because then you can fine tune your strategy that way.
Yeah. I mean, don't want to knock down Google Sheets or Google Docs, because I personally,
Mhm.
even to this stage, as soon as Google Docs became available and Google Sheets came available, what I really loved about it is you could do co-editing. You could share that
Yes.
document with somebody else. That somebody else could be your clients, it could be your team that you're sharing that with.
Mhm.
And I totally agree with you. A nicely structured Google Sheets could look like a calendar, and then you could be putting notes in there. You could be tagging people so that they can see what needs to be done on their end of it. You could do task management. There's quite a lot of stuff that you can do. Not to say things like Jira or Trello or Asana or any of these kind of tools. They're amazing tools. I've used every one of them, by the way. But the thing is, in early stages, especially if you are a startup, it's not important for you to have a fancy tool. It's more to do with, okay, you know what? Your Gmail comes with Google Docs and Google Sheets. It's free. First, organize what you need to pull together, do it there. And once you see that, 3 years down the line, you go like, oh, you know what? I'm so rich and I got so much venture capital in my pocket now. Now I can spend $100 a year on a paid tool. Then if it makes sense, then it makes sense to move over. Otherwise, Google Sheets is more than enough for you. One of the things I do, Melissa, is with my clients. When I sign on with my client, I start up one Google Doc, and I start dropping my notes in there. And then whenever we meet, every like Monday, Tuesday, whatever, I share that screen, and they have access to it also beforehand. And I assign them tasks in that one document, in that one Google Doc. And the clients that have stuck with me, their document is like 300 pages long. They can go and literally see how the journey went. All the data is in there. Everything that we discussed. How did we transition? What did we learn from our test? Everything is in one doc. There, it's not like
Yeah.
multiple documentations, not folders, nothing. It's just one doc, and the latest one just page down to the last page, and that's that's where we are in our journey right now.
Yeah, that works. I mean, for yeah, a lot of companies that I've worked with, I mean, I use Google Docs a lot, especially when I'm working with other strategists and writers. We can all be on one document because there is nothing worse than like having to email for version control. Like, was this the one I was supposed to? No, you don't ever want to do that. So, yeah, no, I agree. Being able to share and see updates as they're happening live is really awesome.
If we tackle startups, what are the three things, if there are startup audience members who are watching this now or watching it in a recording, right? What are
Mhm.
the three top things that you would like to share with them that they can take away and start implementing from your experience, like tangible results that you have had?
Yeah, so I would say start tackling that brand voice and tone. That's something that you will, it seems like, oh, it's this, kind of, not necessary, kind of nice to have thing. But when you have your brand voice and tone guidelines in place, it just makes all the other content that you're going to create much easier. You're going to have a clear understanding of why are we creating this? Who are we writing to? Who is our audience? How do we talk to them? How do we never talk to them? What are like actual things we say? Some really tangible results that I've seen just from spending time on that brand voice and tone, and then also spending time doing user interviews if you don't have users yet, talking to people who are potential users. You can see like things like say onboarding. For me, this is an area when I come into a startup, say to do some content strategy and initial content design. This is an area that I love to focus on because I think onboarding is where you really make a big difference. It's like if your website is the first impression, onboarding is really the first experience they're going to have of working with you. And in my time, working with various startups, I have seen drop offs decrease. You have people as they're going through. It's really great if you can get those recorded user sessions. I had a client where I was watching through recorded user sessions, and they had kind of a lengthy onboarding scenario, which was required because of the industry. It was to do with banking, and so we had to get a lot of personal information. And so it can be daunting for the customer as they're clicking through step after step. So one thing that was helpful was we just created like a this they could see how many steps were left, because if you get started and you're like, is this going to be 50 steps or 10? You don't know, or 5. So it was, 9 steps. So they could see as they went through. That's a little thing, but it actually made a big difference to stop people from giving up like on step 8 when they were almost done and then thinking this is going to last forever. Or um just making things really clear. Another area in onboarding is, say if you need to get a phone number, for instance, from a customer, like you require their phone number, why? Give them a tool tip. Let them know why. Like you're not going to be marketing to them or calling them or selling their information to telemarketers, but letting them know, hey, we need your phone number only in the case of, account security. And, adding that little bit, then people type also less drop off during say trial. Churn is a huge one for startups in the SaaS space. So you obviously don't want a lot of churn. One thing you can do is by creating that, like a onboarding wizard, or having really useful tooltips that are available for the user. They're less likely to find it, hard to use, or less confusion. So yeah, I would think those 3 areas are where I think a lot of startups can get some quick gains if they would focus there.
Now, if we focus on the other side of it, the large gigantic brands like Pepsi, Mondelez, Canon, huge companies, Fortune 50.
Mhm.
What are some of your advice there? The same three. Are they different?
Yeah, so a lot of the advice is going to be similar in that obviously you want to have a great onboarding experience, less drop off, all of that. But for an established company, one thing that can be a really big win is if you've had, say, brand voice and tone guidelines for a really long time, revisit those. What's changed. To me, a brand voice and tone, content strategy, these are living documents. These are not one and done. Get it, you develop it and it's over. Just as people change, as time goes on, so do the brand and voice and tone guidelines. So revisit those. Find, is there an area where we're not really, hitting the mark with our customers anymore, or perhaps we are, saying something that's just gotten monotonous to them. Maybe we can revise this a little bit, make it a little bit more exciting. There can be some big wins there. Another thing that I've seen working with bigger companies, one area that they're always interested in is getting less calls to customer support. Customer support agents at large companies can be overrun with phone calls, or sometimes, the chat agents. Reducing those numbers of calls and chats can be a really great key focus area. And the best way to do that is with having really solid content, solid documentation, frequently asked questions, using AI to your advantage with chat, having a chat bot, that's hopefully mostly designed by a conversation designer, but also can use elements of AI in there. Just working with, trying to find out, if we're getting 100 calls a day about this one particular thing, well, we can fix that. You'll still get maybe, I don't know how many, 25 calls a day, but you'll still get some, because some people aren't going to look at that stuff. But some people would prefer to just find the answers on a website and be done, rather than have to wait for an agent to join a call. So I think that's something. And then just retention, as competition continues to increase, even if you are a really established brand and you have dedicated customers, like, what's to stop the newest startup from coming in and taking those customers from you? You've got to retain those clients. And one way to do that is by, providing them with really high quality content that keeps them coming back to you on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a miss in that customer service. Just like I said earlier, that engineering and marketing, they're kind of siloed in their own fiefdoms. In this, in 2022 and beyond, I think lines are blurred. You need to have that communication flow among the different groups, and not bureaucratically, but very free flowing, right? And the other part of that equation is customer service. When customer service is just putting out fires, and there is no feedback loop, or even communication line between marketing and engineering and customer service and operations, I would say, for that matter too, then a lot of things are amiss in that sense, right? When customer service is handling these things, somebody on the content side, on marketing maybe, if that's where content sits, then that person should be taking that, and their job should be to get all that input from customer service, or if there's operational issues, operations feedback, like order fulfillment and those kinds of things, right? That they get that information, and then they're updating all these self-service AI bots, chat bots, any of those kind of things, so that that next set of 50 calls per day that were coming for that same question is basically handled online. You don't have to call the customer service. And most customers nowadays, they don't want to talk to a human being. They don't want to talk to a human being. They only want to talk to a human being where they could not find the answer. They couldn't Google it, and they couldn't find it on YouTube. Then they want to call the company to talk to someone, because they believe that they can actually know how to do search, and they can search it and get the answer that they want and help themselves and already move on with their lives, rather than get on a phone call or a live chat and wait there for, even if it's a couple of minutes, they're just waiting and not doing what they want to do with their lives.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. And content can have a huge impact on that, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to touch on something that I want to hear your example first, and I'll give an example in this. When you work with UI content or UI design, sometimes doing minor tweaks, right, can have phenomenal difference to conversion rate, response rate, application completion, whatever that KPI is for that thing that you're trying to do. Have you come across something like that, with an example? If you can take us through that, and then I'll give my own example.
Yeah, of course. I have several examples of that, but one that I'll give is, I was working on a project where, in order to continue with the onboarding into this interface, you needed to add some account credentials from other accounts. So you were pulling information from other accounts that you had into this one. People were pausing, they were dropping off. They had gone through so many steps to onboard to this particular software. And then when it came time to add their additional credentials, they were dropping off. So There was some help text, if you clicked like the little question mark and it would tell you, what to do next, but it was kind of unclear and it was hard to see where, the little question mark was quite small. It was actually really faint as well. So my hypothesis in that was if we can make this really clear and way easier for the user, so they're not having to type a million things, maybe they just click and can add, how like sometimes on an app where you can, if you need to add your LinkedIn, for instance, it'll give you a quick little login. You could just do it instead of typing. So we started testing and found that we were able to quickly reduce the drop off by about 20%, which is, great. So I think that, and then also I would say another one was that phone number example I gave before. It was required. And when people did not want to give, because like you said earlier, people don't want to talk to someone, especially if they think it's a sales call. Like that is truly like just gives people fear, they just want to just be done with it. So making things very clear and showing just with, we're talking about one sentence of why do we need your phone number helped us to move people along in the process and get them onboarded quickly.
So I'll give you two examples, right? Because you just sparked another thing from my memory. For one of my earlier experiences, the company was Vitamin Shop actually. So I was there. We were looking at data, and in the data, with certain fields, we saw asterisk. For example, you would say Melissa Williams asterisk. You would put in your phone number asterisk. Literally, there was an asterisk in the data. The consumer actually typed Melissa Williams. When she typed her name, she put an asterisk after that, right? Going like, what is there? Talk to the developer. Maybe he's adding on asterisks randomly. I don't know what's happening here, right? No, he's not. There's no. Here's the code. There is no asterisk here, right? Then I went through the site. I went through the site and I went through the one thing that I could explain is on the form where we were collecting that data, there was instruction given. You have to be very explicit about instructions, right? Instruction given to the consumer who was putting in their name, shipping address, and stuff. Asterisk, the asterisk denotes required fields. So to you, it was instruction that whatever you thought as a consumer, what's important, like your name is important, Melissa Williams, asterisk, phone number, asterisk. We went there, we removed it completely, and then right under the field, each field that was required, we actually put in parentheses required, in smaller, for like almost like a footprint. The asterisk problem went away.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's so funny. And it is just something so small like that. It can make such a big difference in the user experience. It's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that was and Vitamin Shop at that time was like one of the only companies that was selling vitamins and supplements on the web, one of the earliest ones, So it was very popular.
Mhm.
So we had a ton of data we had to clean up just because of this asterisk problem. So that was one. The other
Wow.
one, very, very recently, this was a intentional test that we did. It was for a fashion company in the UK that that brand is my client, and we're helping them grow. So I said, can you pick out a product that doesn't sell, right? They're like, oh, that's interesting. Why don't you take the bestseller? I said, no, bestseller, you don't know why they're buying it because 1,000 of their friends told them to buy it. And there you go. You have 5,000 units sold, that's not going to really tell me anything. Give me one that doesn't sell at all, nobody likes it, doesn't sell, and so on. So the owner, the founder, she gave me that one product. I said, okay, perfect. For the product title, after the product title, put a flame emoji right after it. Like flame, that's all you wanted to do, a flame emoji? I could have picked any product. No, I said I wanted the worst product. Like, what are you testing? I said, I want to see if I put a product badge, an emoji to me is a badge. I just want to distinguish it from all the other listings, right? None of the other listings have it. This product that we know definitely does not sell, and it didn't. We looked at analytics. In the past 3 months, we may have sold a few, We put that flame on there. We were selling 10 units per day.
Wow.
10 units per
That's
day.
amazing.
She goes like, what was that? I'm like, it's human psychology. We're distinguishing this one product by using a badge, an emoji, right? to distinguish it and say, this has a flame emoji. I don't know what it means. It just has a flame next to it, you know? She
Hmm.
goes like, okay, how do we roll? Do we put flames against everything else? No, I said that's going to defeat the purpose. The reason I actually tested that was to enable a feature called product badges, so that if this product is a customer favorite, we'll put a little label on it, customer favorite. Amazon does it every day, right? You're right.
Yep.
Prime is one of those big labels that you see, right? If it's a new product, it will say new, right? If it's a bestseller, it will say bestseller. If it's a staff pick, it's going to say staff pick on it. Once we introduced that, the conversion rate with the same traffic skyrocketed,
Wow. That's awesome.
because people are looking to distinguish. When you have 100 items in your catalog, they're looking for you to distinguish it either with your words, graphics to play a huge role, imagery, any kind
Mhm.
of icons, anything like that, to kind of give it that distinction, so that they know, okay, you know what, oh, I get it. This one has 5 reviews, but it's a staff pick because look at it, how gorgeous it is. They're saying that we're picking this, right? It will have some
Mhm.
meaning to it. But when you don't have that in all 100, all it has is the same set of images, product title, product description, maybe a couple of bullet points. You're really not really selling that person on what makes this product different than the other 99 that you have in your catalog.
Yes, that's very interesting. That's great.
Um, when we think about content, and we have talked quite a lot, you and I discussed videos and images and text and so on and so forth, but I do want to touch on a population that actually uses the web, but not many people talk about it. And a lot of companies, bigger companies, have actually gotten in a lot of trouble because of it, you know. And that has to do with accessibility, because nowadays websites and content have to be accessible to people who cannot, they don't have vision, they can't see, you know,
Mhm.
or they can't hear if you have a video. Many other things, or maybe they need to feel like a braille writing or something like that, or they can't speak. I mean, if it's a voice activated device, they can't speak. How do they use those kind of conveniences, right? So what
Right.
are your thoughts and around like strategies when it comes to accessibility and making your presence accessible regardless of the platform, the website being the obvious one?
Yeah, of course. This is an area where content designers can really be a big help. We can really advocate for accessibility in meetings and with our designers. Because the reality is, when we make things more accessible, it really helps everyone. I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's quite a high number of us. I think it's almost everyone is going to need to use some type of accessibility, feature at some point. Whether it's maybe you broke your arm so you're temporarily not able to use it, or just there's so many things. But as a content designer, one thing that I do when I'm looking to improve accessibility is I look at things like, for instance, images. Do we have alt text there? Do we have the proper metadata? If we're doing a video, is there are captions available? Things like that, that are really, you can just sort of advocate, like, hey, we need to do this, let your team know. Another area that can be really helpful is to go through like forms, and anywhere where you're signing in, if you have, and it's so common when you're signing up for something, you see like sample text, and it'll be like kind of in a grayed out color, and that's where the instructions are. But the problem is that a screen reader won't necessarily read what's in that box. So, that user doesn't know what to do or what to put there. You can instead put the instructions underneath the label, and then, let that way, if you want to use some sample text in there, that's fine. But that should not be where instructions live. Those are just a few areas, but yeah, I think that as content designers, one of our jobs is definitely to advocate for accessibility. And it can be simple as like, what color is the text? If you have, orange text on a white background, like that's not going to be easily seen by everyone. So just advocate, and say, hey, why don't we change this? Or sometimes that can be hard, if you're in a large company where standards have been set, but it is an area I think that luckily, like, a lot of people are starting to focus on. I'm very happy to see that. I've attended conferences on the topic. It's starting to become something that people are more interested in being involved in, which is really wonderful to see.
One advice I have for most brands, especially if they're startups, right? If implementing accessibility is a big issue for you, meaning that somebody you spoke to somebody who was an accessibility expert, and they gave you a scope of work that's like few $100,000, and like that's too much for you. At a minimum, I think is some of the best practices for accessibility are very similar to SEO optimization of sites. So for example, if you have an image, describe that image in an alt text, and have that in there, so that even from an SEO perspective, that helps you. Not that your intention was accessibility. However, that person who comes to your site and they say, okay, describe the image, or they click on it, they'll see what it actually, or actually their devices would actually read out what the photo is for that, with that alt text and stuff like that. And if it's a video, getting a caption nowadays or transcription is pretty easy. There are sites like rev.com, I personally use it, that allows you to get a transcription of that video, and then include it. And it's not, by the way, it's not just for accessibility. Most people on social media, they're watching your videos without the audio on. So it's not that they have accessibility issue. They just, because they don't want to hear it anymore. But those burnt in captions help. So that burnt in captions could be helping not only like a SRT sub caption file, but also a burnt in caption can help you even from a social media perspective with all consumers. So there's a lot of overlap between accessibility and other fields like SEO and social media content and other things that you should just implement it just as part of your standard.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Yep. So now the topic that I think you and I discussed in the green room, right? Uh,
Yeah.
when you're going through your TikTok roll or reels, ChatGPT, 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 ChatGPT. You just keep on hearing it. AI. As soon as I hear ChatGPT, I scroll very quickly because I've been using it. I've been using it for a since it became beta available. I've been using it pretty regularly to kind of get a sense of AI. Notion also has. They just accepted me into their, I think, alpha or beta test for Notion AI. That's another tool that I use. And prior to that, Jasper, Jarvis, there's so many of them out there, right? So should content professionals be concerned about AI? Are the bots replacing humans?
No, I don't think so. I think this is a conversation that is had in every industry, first of all. So I've had like some writers reach out to me like, what should we do? And I will say this, if you are basing your career on, word count or something of that nature, then yeah, there is probably cause to be concerned because Chat GPT could write stuff way quicker than you ever can, right? But the thing is, in my opinion, as a content designer, strategist, writers, is that, the most important skill that we bring is our ability to listen to users, understand their needs, and then, write and rewrite, iterate on stuff, use empathy to understand what else can we do to make their experience better. As of today, coming to the end of 2022, the AI can't do that yet. 100 years from now, I have no idea. But right now, it can only do what we tell it to do. As far as you put in, I want a script. Say I want a marketing video script for 30 seconds, and I have to be very specific about what I want for it to give me what I'm looking for. So somebody's got to be there to do that. And yeah, I mean, so as a side gig, I do some voice acting work, and this same conversation has come up. Like, there's these AI voices that are now narrating audiobooks. You start listening to one though, and it's like, at least right now, not to bash the people that have made those, but it's not the same as a human being. It's the reason we go and see live musicians play. Sure, we can get the studio album that's been perfected, but we want to see that person in action, and we want to hear a person. We want to hear breaths and expression. And the same thing I think goes for content. We want a person behind it, whether the chat bot or the chat GPT writes it. We want that human interaction and person to person contact of actually somebody having done that research and listened to someone else before they just threw words on a page.
So some of my thoughts about Chat GPT specifically, right? Um, One, I think it's a very good tool for you if you are, because sometimes you have that writer's block, you have, or even as a strategist, you want to brainstorm some ideas and stuff like that. You just want something to throw some ideas at you, right?
Hmm.
So you could actually form your query and say, provide me with top 50 ideas about XYZ, right?
Hmm.
And then when it throws that list of 50 or 25, whatever it gives you, right? At least it's a good starting point for you to say, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that I didn't think about that. It's similar to 2 seconds ago, we would be Google searching, right? You would be
Hmm.
searching on Google to kind of get some ideas to scrapbooking. We talked about that earlier in the interview, right? It
Hmm.
From that perspective, it's helpful, right? It gives you those kind of ideas, you know. But um, when it comes to producing content that would be creative, right, or playful or anything like that, can you create the with ChatGPT specifically, not with Jarvis or Jasper or any of the other tools? Can you do that? The answer is you can, but it has its parameters where what it thinks you're asking it to do versus what it produces. Then you still have to have that human being take that. Maybe that response may have saved you 20, 30 minutes of research or something like that. It might be helpful for you in that sense, but still so what I'm saying is you could, as a writer, as a content developer, as a content designer, you could use it as a tool like a calculator.
Hmm.
The calculator did not replace the accountants, right? And it
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
replace your CFO that you hired for your startup
Hmm.
or for your Fortune 50 brand, right? The calculator
Right.
didn't replace them, or even Excel spreadsheets for that matter, which is a phenomenal application, or Google Sheets,
Hmm.
so it's not, I don't think it's there, but however, the calculator helps you get your calculations done very quickly. I think ChatGPT also allows you to save you time, so that it pitches you ideas so that you can take it from there. Don't take it as gospel. It's a good pitch. See what you can do with it as a content developer and designer. So the other thing, I've been testing ChatGPT quite a lot, and if you ask it anything data based right now, right, most probable, whatever, something like that. What it does is it tells you that its data that it has, its knowledge base, is limited to all the way through from start of time till 2021. So anything that
Okay.
has happened recent has no clue. It doesn't have any clue about that yet. So if you are looking at some sort of smart AI feedback on current events, you're not going to get it, or current trends. The current trend, if you ask for it, it will give you something that was in 2021, because it doesn't have the knowledge base to give you, or any kind of data point or know-how or anything to give you any kind of feedback that would be relevant to, well, spring fashion 2023. you know
Hmm.
it will
Yeah.
respond with, I cannot predict the future. That's the response the AI will tell you.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I haven't played around with it yet, but that's interesting to know.
Yep. If you want to try it, it's chat.openai.com. You just go
Okay.
there, you validate with your Google account, and you're good to go. They're opening it up more and more now, so you should try every day. Try to see if you can get that.
Mhm.
um, let's say, you know somebody sold the CMO sold the budgeting committee on the need for this content designer, and now here you go, Melissa Williams shows up. You're the solo content designer, right? Meaning
Yeah.
that everything, all the buck stops with you, right, related to content design, strategy, and stuff like that. What should you keep in mind, being that you're the solo artist here? You don't have a team, you're it.
Yes. So yes, this is a very different scenario than someone joining a well-established content team. It can be a lot of fun. It's also a lot of work. But the great thing is you have the ability at this point to really shape the way content strategy and design will be done at the company. So sometimes the things that will come up is it's kind of hard to get a seat at the table sometimes if you don't ask for it. Like, you're not going to get invited to the meetings you need to be in because nobody will know you need to be there. But part of the job of that solo content strategist or designer is to really be the advocate for the user. So think about, like, if you need to be in a meeting, then, advocate for you to get that invite. Sometimes I've had to, I've done this role several times as the only person, and I have to bug someone a million times, like, add me to that invite. Hey, I'm looking at people's calendars, see what they've got going. Oh, wow, they're conducting user sessions next week. I didn't get invited to those. I need to be part of that. And so you just have to kind of advocate. Um, and then also keep in mind that, like, as you develop things like brand voice and tone and strategies, you really have a great opportunity to set standards and to create, systems in place for when you do get to bring in that next hire to help with some of this stuff. It can be really great. It is, like I said, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun to just watch. There's so many areas where content strategy can make such a huge impact on the business. One thing I will say too is always try as much as possible to tie what you're doing to the bottom line. Because if you're the first person in this role, sometimes, they're like, who knows, the CEO might have hired you and decided we need a content strategist because we've heard we need a content strategist. But as time goes on and you want to keep your job and you want to make sure they know that, hey, these things are happening because, of work that I've worked on, just try to keep those statistics. If you work on onboarding and there's less drop off, try to keep that, that's tied directly to the bottom line of the company. And that's not a small thing. Like, you want to tie your work to the money the company's making so you can stick around.
Sounds good. So I always ask every one of my guests this one final question, right? Given the fact, by the way, thank you for dropping all that knowledge, first of all, over the past 55 minutes that we have been discussing this. What is your number one $100,000 expert insight into content design, content marketing, content development that you want to, like, practical advice or insights that you would like to share in the next 5 minutes with the audience that they should take away and start implementing?
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's see. I would say kind of what I've said before, like, content does not happen in a silo. It is not just, whether it's marketing, whether it's content design, whether it's documentation, this all comes back to your customer, your user, whoever is the end, recipient of this content. So always, always, always ask questions, try to get interviews, spend most of your time understanding and empathizing with that user. So if you are working on, an app, find out, why are they coming to your app? What problem are you solving for them? Like, why do they need it? It's not just, about having cute, witty phrases, to get people to log in, but, like, how are you making their lives better? If you're selling products, like, how do your products make their lives better? Always have that user in view. For a lot of companies, there'll be several personas. Know exactly which one you're talking to at any given time. If you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. So just keep it in mind that that person, like, a lot of times, like, I will think of a specific person, and have them in mind as I'm creating content. So always put the user first. And yeah, that would be my final piece of advice.
Melissa, well said. Thank you very much for being on the show. You are the 25th episode of this season. Now we have completed 75 episodes of the show,
That's
and we have
awesome.
more. We have 25 more guests coming up next season, which we will start next year. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And thank you, audience, live audience, if you tuned in live. If you're catching this on a recording, thank you for consuming this content and hopefully implementing it. Definitely, we will take just a holiday break here for the next 2 weeks, and then we will come back with 25 more incredible guests, just like Melissa here, to drop knowledge on our show and share their expertise with us. Thank you very much for tuning in. Happy holidays.
Thanks. Happy holidays.